Much, man. Good? Yeah, I'm good, man.
Yeah,
I'm glad to be back here sitting around with y'all.
Yes, and likewise.
Yeah, we've been slacking off a little bit last couple of episodes. We skipped 3 weeks before the last one, and then we skipped in 3 weeks, 2 weeks. 2 weeks, yeah. But I'm glad to be back in here. Man.
Same here.
Yeah. So I was having a conversation with somebody recently, and we were talking about parenting, raising children, how generations affect one another. Earlier generations have a strong effect on the outcome of the generation that follows them. And so we started talking, and there was a point specifically that really struck me, and I was hoping. I'm not a parent. I've been involved in a lot of kids' lives, helping out one way or another. But I don't have any biological children. But you guys are fathers, you too. And I'm sure Al, just like me, I'm sure you've been involved with quite a few young people. So the question that we kind of asked ourselves is, what is the difference? If there is any, what is the difference in the significance of your contribution to society as a parent when you're raising a boy versus raising girls, or raising boys versus raising girls? Because, for instance, in order to raise a son successfully in this current social climate and the world that we live in, especially in our community, we're trying to make sure, okay, you don't, you're not a violent person, you're not out here, robbing and all of that kind of stuff. You treat women properly. You don't be, a scumbag. You get up and you do whatever it is that you do for a living. Find yourself a career or work, whatever. And then versus that, and of course, being nice to people, all that. And then on the other side is, girls, we train them for whatever we train them for. I don't want to get into that because people would get a little mad. But anyway, whether or not we want to admit it, and I think all of us are mature enough to admit it, there's a difference in the effort that you put in. Not necessarily the amount of effort, but you put different types of lessons in place for girls versus boys. So we were saying is it, and this was just kind of a lighthearted conversation, but it struck me heavy. We were just kind of joking around saying okay, so are you doing a better service to society by raising a man properly, or if you raise a girl properly? You know what I mean? So yeah, exactly. So I was like, man, that's actually a really interesting question. How much does it change between the effort that we put in with girls versus boys? So anyway, that's the question. I would love to hear y'all's thoughts. I have some thoughts, but I'm not a parent, so yeah, and I don't mind sharing mine. But I would like to hear y'all's thoughts, because both of you have boys and girls in your home here. Go first. Go ahead, bro. You go first.
I mean, I can answer being the son of a father. Yeah, I can answer that one. I feel like society's inherently going to a certain degree, give women roles, values, things like that. Mm-hmm. I think it's you make more of an impact when you pay attention to the boys.
Okay.
Just because, I mean,
you saying as a father or as
that's another point. That's another variable.
Well, as parents.
Which parent?
Yeah, as parents.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think from what I've seen, I mean, I don't have any children, but from what I've seen, man, like you got to pay attention to the girls, you do, but they tend to just mature if you kind of give them that nudge. They tend to mature, hopefully. But with fellas, you have to put more into them because they're gonna grow up and be pillars, providers, thinkers, things like that, and so that tends to have more of an impact, and then they tend to have influence on maybe certain situations that they're in with women. Good, hopefully good influence. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like if you put that time and attention, I just think about how I was raised. Because I was, we were all boys once, and the attention that my father gave us with regards to the specific things he would say about going from transitioning from a boy to a man. And it primarily centered around how you conduct yourself around people, how you conduct yourself around women. Don't touch. You got to get to a certain point in your life where you got to stop playing. So I hope this, sparks some thoughts with y'all, like how y'all be doing with y'all's kids. But, I think boys specifically, you got to really be like, hey man, that's the point in your life. You got to stop playing and like really say, okay, because you're going to be the head of a household, you're going to be a husband. There's all these things, and all of us learn it at different whatever stage in life we're going to learn. But the earlier you get them, the better off they are. You know, we teach them values that center around how are you going to be a contributor in society. How are you going to contribute? So I think it's the impact. It's a hard question, because the impact, honestly, is on it's on both genders. You know, because women they shape the world because they are with the kids. You know, they the kids come out of their womb, they have that bond, that relationship with the children. But yet and still, the man, if we don't, because I forget where this saying comes from, but a society only does as good as how its men treats its women and children. It can only do so well based on that. So you have certain groups that treat their women and kids. I mean, they kill them, killing them and stuff. You know what I'm saying? And so they curse themselves right there. You know, and so I think as parents, that impact is really ultimately is going to be on the man, raising that boy to a man. Just because we are in positions end up being in positions of influence, leadership, our responsibilities go longer, have to go the distance. You know, women rely on us. So ultimately, if you plant the seed in the boy to be, because you got to be a lot of different things, provider, handyman, whatever you cook, work on cars, you got to be able to do all these different various things, take care of your land, take care of your home. And so you have to, my father, he put a lot of that in us, and so a woman is going to look to that because they have to have the children. That's I mean, we can't do that. That's a big responsibility. So that in and of itself is what God placed on them. And then for us, we just got to do, we have a lot of other responsibilities. But if you get the kids young, get the boys young, they can be prepared so they can have more of that impact that'll go the distance, I think. Does that kind of...
Yeah, it answers my question. I'm aware that this is a conversation where I think each of us is going to come from probably a slightly different. Like most of the time, we all kind of gel together with our opinions and thoughts. But every one of us has this. This is the type of conversation that is going to depend heavily on our individual experiences, and So I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. But yes, that did answer the question.
I think that was good what you said, Al. I think that's a good starting point. I'm still trying to gather my thoughts together because, like, currently, I have an older child, and I think Gary can attest to that as well, right? And then I have younger ones, right? So there's a spread of you have to switch mode a little bit, right? And your approach to one child that's older versus the ones that's younger, you have to be tactful. You know what I'm saying? You're thinking with the experience. Because sometimes the older child, you kind of fail a little bit. The failures you have to get better with.
That's how it always is.
You know what I'm saying?
One.
Yeah. Like I blew it on that one.
Yeah.
More time.
Second and third time.
Yeah, that last one. I'll get that.
Right. So, but which is actually a good thing because if the child is not doing anything detrimental or whatnot, you've set some pretty good foundations and whatnot. But to answer your question, I think that from my standpoint, and this would be good for a woman to be in this conversation.
Sure, absolutely.
100%.
Where's Tam?
I know. Yeah, it was. She'll probably. She'll.
We're gonna do a part two.
Yeah, I'll probably be good and see what her thought is. I lean greatly on. So I have older siblings. Okay. So I have 5 siblings. I have 2 brothers and 3 sisters. They've had children way before me, right? So in the process of uncle, I've actually learned to be kind of like a father figure as well, in some form or fashion, right?
At practice.
I had a little bit of practice, but watching them raise the kids, it taught me a few things on when my children came. And really, I call that a blessing because it's the experience that you see other people and the observations and whatnot. So when I have my own, it was the things that I said I would never do, and I end up doing it anyway. But that's like, those are the learning curves, and those are the things that you kind of develop over time, right?
Right.
So to answer your point about the boys, I think it's very, very important for me to, I'm not gonna say be hard on my boys, but be very thorough.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, with the conversation. Be very, very thorough. And because they have to understand, like you said, that one day they're gonna be a pillar to society, right? They're gonna have to be the one that sets a certain tone in their home or whatnot. Now, by me saying that alone, society will probably shun what I just said. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But in actuality, we know that that's the truth. We know that that is a good, at least a starting point. Because if you get a weak man, them kids are going to run. That's almost like, I was just talking to somebody about this. I'm still staying on the subject, right?
We got time.
Can you domestication of a lion, right?
Yeah.
I think, didn't Mike Tyson say that he had 2 lions, right? He owned two tigers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, y'all. So 2 tigers, right? But he had to get rid of them because they started to recognize he was getting older, right? Which is very, very crucial, right? That's actually wise on Mike Tyson's point, because if not, they would have something.
Oh yeah, tigers.
It would have been a wrap. So the same thing is with us, like as men in our household, is about setting a tone. Because right now, my dad is 87 years old, man, and he still has an authority when he speaks. When he talks, I listen. You see what I'm saying? And that's because of the respect that I always had. And not only that, but the follow through. You see what I'm saying? So it's very important for me, when I say something, I follow through with what I say. You know what I'm saying? And mean what I say, so they can see the fruits of what I say. You see what I'm saying? That is very, very important to me. So to talk to my sons about this is I talked to my son about, not the little ones yet, but Sion, I talked to him about sex when he was younger. Just to start him off, like, be aware of certain things, like kind of stay away from certain conversations or whatnot. But if he goes on to that way anyway, there's nothing I can do about that, right? Because it's about the environment he ends up finding himself in. How do you protect the child from getting to those environments? It's only so much you can do. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
With my daughter, I lean heavily on Tamara to kind of to help me, to help her. You know, one of the things that's been across my mind is knowing how fast information moves today. You know, and with my girls and dealing with video games like Roblox and different things like that, I know that there is a tone and an environment and conditioning that is some nasty people out in the world that really want to harm little ones. You see what I'm saying? So I'm glad you actually brought this conversation up, because I am constantly thinking about how can I at least protect them as long as I possibly can, so I can be the one, so I can be the father that shared them that information. I don't want anybody talking to them about exposing. No, I want me to be that. So I'm gonna just start off with that right now, you know, as I'm still thinking about it.
Let me ask y'all this. I actually appreciate and love y'all's experience that you have with having 2 younger sons, and that responsibility of being the one to shape their perspective and prepare them based on your own example. And when you're men that are living right, that can't be that difficult. I mean, it has its challenges, but it's like, it's got to be a good feeling to say, I'm going to shape how this guy operates, becoming an adult is not that far off. But for y'all's experiences, the question, I think, should be more so, what do you want for your child? What do you want for these boys as they're growing? Like, emotions aside, just dealing with reality, because we all have experiences as Black men in this country, and it's varied. I mean, there are nuanced things, there are things that are in your face, there's covert things, there's overt things, but you have to ask yourself, what do I want for these boys? Because they're not necessarily going to grow up in the time we did, but they're still Black. You know what I'm saying? And so then, having daughters, you have to say, what do I specifically want for these girls? You know, knowing that dudes are nasty, it's a lot going on. What do I want? What do I want to say? Because then that shapes what your answer is going to be, and then that gives you the focus to say, okay, this is how they're going to impact based on the impact that I'm going to have on them. This is how they're going to impact the world. But it has to start with the question. And you know, some people may ask this when they give birth to the child, but it may come later where you say, what exactly do I want for this person they're waking up in my home every day. I feed them, I clothe them, I send them to school. What do I want for them? So what would y'all's question be to that? What do you want for your sons and then your daughters, if you can even answer it?
I think you want them to have as complete and happy a childhood as possible first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you have to compromise anything to provide. Compromise. I guess it is the right word. It's not like sacrificing. You want to do that for them, but not compromising who you are, what you want for them just for them to be happy. But you want them to have a happy and complete childhood, but then you want them to also be prepared. And that's where those are like where the two opposing things kind of meet. Because their happiness and complete childhood is you catering to their emotions and their whims, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the preparation part, you got to tell them, okay, when you're out of this house or out there in the world, because as soon as they start going to school or somewhere where you're not around all the time, you can't control and you're not aware of what all they experience and what all they're around. So you have to kind of be preparing them at the same time, like you said, as a black man in America, we've had conversations with them before they were 10 years old about how do you conduct yourself when a cop is around.
Yeah.
And that's a frustrating conversation because you're telling them how to survive an encounter like that, but the way you tell them to survive that encounter is to basically buckle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's like if you don't, they can be in a situation where they might encounter a cop who doesn't think highly of them, and it could end bad.
Yeah.
Because it has.
Yeah.
It does often still 2023. Right. So you have to kind of find that balance, and that's what I think are the main two things. Like and I talk to my kids about this a lot. Like basically, I want them to have as many good things as I've had happen to me in my life without the experience of some of the bad. You don't want to rob them of teachers,
Right.
but you want to let them learn as many lessons as they can without the pain as possible. And sometimes they're not going to listen. They're going to want to experience it so bad that they're going to force themselves to go through that pain. You can't stop it. It's like you said. It's like you can't keep them from everything. You can't protect them from everything. So in not being able to protect them from everything, you have to kind of go into that mode of, well, how do I prepare you? If I can't keep it from you, how do I prepare you for how do you meet it? Because whether if it's up to me, I'm going to try to keep it from you. But when that time comes, not if, when that time comes that I can't, you still need to know how to be prepared and how to deal with the situation. You know what I mean?
So peppering it or focusing on critical thinking and conflict resolution for a child is probably paramount.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is.
And so what would be the approach though between having a boy and a girl when you're talking about, because see, the experience is going to be different. The paths are different for black men and black women, unfortunately. We get divided. We get, because we grow up together, happy, having fun, on the playground, tripping out, video games. But then there comes a time, say maybe around middle school, high school, where our differences, our paths start to separate. So with young boys, we have to focus on, hey, try not to get killed or try not to be negatively influenced. So how is your approach different for a daughter? Like, what is the conversation like? You know what I'm saying? Because is this staying in line with what you're talking about?
What's the difference in the amount of effort?
Yeah. Like, what's the approach? The type of effort.
Not saying that one is more important than the other or one is more valuable than the other.
Yeah.
But there's obviously a distinct difference between raising a successful daughter and raising a successful son in terms of their relationships, their contribution to society, the way that they parent, everything.
Yeah.
There's differences just simply because they're wired different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, males and females are wired differently internally. It's just a fact.
Yeah, that's just a fact.
So the approach has to be different. The approach has to be different. The types of things that we want to prepare them for can have variables within, in them. So, for instance, if we're talking about sex, we're, typically telling our boys, hey, don't rape our women. And we're telling to our girls, listen, watch out for these guys because they might want to, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm sorry for using that word. I know that's a trigger word, but yeah, but yeah, that's exactly. You're right. You're right on track. Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
It's quite a difficult topic in such a way because I think especially when I'm right in the midst of the experience, right?
Because you're doing it for the first time.
I'm doing it for the first time. I mean, outside of nieces and and nephews and whatnot. But the issue is it's not an issue. It's actually a good. The thing is this is a good burden.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good burden to have.
It's great responsibility.
It's a great responsibility to have, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, once you recognize the great responsibility, you see the potential that you can contribute to that soul.
Yeah, that's it.
And I think we have to realize that is a soul that we are not only harnessing, so to speak, but we are training and teaching to be an asset in society.
Yeah.
So the negative things that may come in their life right now, I think we should groom them, right, in such a way. Like when you talk about police officer stuff, I've got pulled over multiple times by police. Never got beat or anything like that. Thank God I didn't. But you know what I'm saying? One time I should have. I ain't gonna lie. But it didn't happen, right?
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? But I'm just being true.
No, I feel you, bro.
Being truthful, right? But the thing is, that's a long time ago when you're young and stupid, right? But the thing is the whole idea is you teach them those experiences so they can avoid. Now, if they find themselves in that situation, it's all about preparing their thoughts so they can be reminded of my words. You see what I'm saying? And I think that's the key.
Right.
A girl, that's one I got to think about for a minute. That's
especially from the perspective of a father, because there's nobody you want to protect more in the world than your baby girl.
And that leads me into the question of, as a parent, do you ever look at yourself and say, okay, what are my limits here? And then what don't I want my kid to get from me? Have you ever thought about that?
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, so with a boy, you could definitely say, okay, this is what I want for this child, right? You can definitely say, I don't want you to get killed. I want you to comply to survive, whatever it takes. But for a girl, I think as men, that's where our limits are like, what do I have? What can I say? All I can say is, dudes are nasty.
So what about the subtler points of raising a person and developing a child's character?
Yeah,
things like temper, patience,
self-control.
Self-control, confidence, anxiety. All these things that we have in one way or another. Some of us, have more anger,
void of emotion,
and we but we know that our offspring are often have a tendency to kind of pick up some of those same traits.
Yeah.
And so while dealing with society in terms of what society may bring to us is a huge thing, but it's also just as important in my mind to help understand how to deal with ourselves internally. You know what I mean? What are the things that trigger me? What are the things that cause me to be bad in a relationship? What are the things that cause me to fall short when I set a goal? These type of things, because I know that I have shortcomings that cause me to fall short when I set a goal or this or that. And like you're saying, these are the things that I may want to. And again, I don't have any children, but I would imagine that this is how you know what I'm saying.
Very good, I love it, man. So this is the reason why we're doing this, so I can become a better father, husband, friend, brother, and so on down the line.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the whole idea is because the more I learn from you brothers and the more I experience with our conversation and being challenged daily, right? And dying daily to myself, right? I feel that there's going to be I emit something out of it.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? My conversation, when I mean conversations, my lifestyle is going to be recognized by the little ones, by the children.
Yep. Yeah. Recognized and emulated.
Yeah, exactly. Because the very moment, if something does happen, the first thought is, what am I teaching my child right now?
Yeah.
Now, my kids, every child does have anger issues in some regard, right? They'll get frustrated in video games, right? When you video games, you see them, you know what I'm saying, right? The first thing, when I do see that, I ask them, a lot of times I ask my sons, like, how's that working out for you? You know what I'm saying? Is that, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, you done broke your controller. Like, cause you get real mad, you can't play it off. Right.
Stay pretty calm.
Right. Huh?
Stay pretty
I got
calm.
you.
Yeah.
I used to get real. Tamara told me, man, she was like, man, I thought you were gonna hurt me.
Oh, man, gotcha. Yeah.
And I realized, man, like,
down and all your clothes is torn.
Right. Black out.
Yeah, because certain things when they get irate at, you know what I'm saying, it's like ridiculous. And the stuff that I would think that they should get mad at, they don't. But the other stuff, you like, come on now, what's that? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But not saying that they're warranted for anything to do, right? To me, I think that they're teaching me that I need to check my behavior so my lifestyle can show when they have their children, they don't have to respond. And to go back to the word that you didn't want to use, right?
Yeah.
The RAP, right? So you look at that, right? That has to come from something, right? Maybe an experience, a conditioning, or whatever the case may be. A lot of the things are learned behavior. A lot of the wickedness and the nasty men that's in the world, it comes from an upbringing and conditioning. Somehow, somewhere, it comes from something. Right? Something was missed down the line. But I recognize that, right? I see that in society. It's only so much we can do, right, moving forward for our daughters, for our nieces, and different things like that, because you can't be with them 24/7.
You know what I mean? But you know what's really powerful? And I think this works more often than not. How you kill two birds with one stone is, especially the blessing is that you guys are with your ladies.
Yeah.
Just lead by example. The kids are watching all the time.
Yeah.
They see how you treat your lady all the time. The boys see how you treat your lady, and then the girls see how she gets treated. That's what's going to leave an imprint on their heart. Not on their mind necessarily, but on their heart. So when they come across a bum dude, they'll think about, like, there's a dude in my life that treated my mom this way, and they'll have that reference. Because y'all know when you give kids a reference point, because like, okay, so you just said all the negative, nasty stuff out there. But I think good influence goes a lot farther, because that ultimately is what becomes the protector in that child's mind. They'll have flaws. Now, some people still mess up, but some people have a moral barometer to say, you know what, I saw my dad, and I'm only speaking from the son of good parents.
Yeah, that's good.
And the kids are watching. Now, it may not happen all the time like that, but for the most part, if in your home you say to your wife, we're never going to argue in front of our kids. If we argue, let's leave the house or go behind closed doors. Because that leaves a violent, that can impact each kid very differently, and then they grow up violent. They don't know why, and they look back and say, "Oh yeah, I saw my dad, do what he." But if you are always like very flirtatious, very loving, very soft spoken, for example, to your lady, then that may leave an imprint where you ain't got to do as much work on the back end, because all the kids really doing is, if they're in the house with you 24/7, all they're really doing is watching you. So I'm saying, like, if you are talking to your lady in a very kind and peaceful and loving way, that girl, that is going to resonate with her in a way you can never know. And I love the film Courageous because some of that was depicted in there. The Kendrick brothers film. Because in the father in there, I love the black representation of the father, because what he did is he took his daughter like on a little date, and he gave her like a little promise ring. He said, just, I promise you I'll always be there for you. And then when I have to give you away, I just want you to always know that I want to be an example type of a thing. You know what I'm saying? And it left an impression. And I think that can work more often than not. When it comes to having that impact, and then that person leaving your home and going into the world and saying, you know what, I come from a good home. Because like you said, you want your kids, you want them to have good, happy, peaceful, young lives, so that when they grow up, they're not bitter, resentful, confused, angry, lost, questioning everything. Because see, we live in a world, we see what's going on in the world. It's absolutely crazy. It's bananas. But how hard is it affecting us?
Right.
It's not really, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
If somebody bullies me on Facebook,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So, but if you tell your kid this is not what's important, and then they see you not on your phone or you not on your tablet, and they're like, I see my dad reading, I see him out in the yard, I see him doing other things. I want to emulate, I want to be like that. And then when that kid grows up, it's like he just knows all these different kinds of things because he literally watched his father do it.
Right.
If he's a hustler, a pimp, a player, he literally watched his father do it. But if he's a fix-it guy, handyman, that's what my father was. Fixed everything around the house, and he was like, I don't want to pay nobody, you know. Now some things you just can't do. He was, but the thing is that your critical thinking builds faster.
Man, I love that.
I may not be able to, because I'm not a plumber. I can't do plumbing. But the thing is, I can fix this though. You always have that confidence that you were talking about. That kid will have that confidence to grow up with confidence to say, I can fix things, I can earn money, I can approach women. Because my father had a woman, so I can get me a woman too. It's just that's our minds go back to the primitive basic stuff you were saying about confidence, self-control, just understanding how things work. Because some people don't really go into society knowing how it works. They get into society and they're like, I don't even know how to talk to women. You know what I'm saying? That's weird to me, but it's a very common thing. Dudes can't handle rejection. You're gonna get rejected. Girls are gonna reject you. Yeah. Don't be ready to kill them. I mean, who taught? Like, what do we like? Who raised you?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think it, like you said, it always goes back to what did this kid see at home? Who was this kid? Whose house was this kid left over?
I know.
You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
So I think that's important.
I think I know you were asking like the difference in preparing boys and girls. I don't approach it that way.
Okay.
Only because I think that was a generalization that was applied to our generation and generations before. I think you have to go to a little bit deeper level now. And not just because of the way the world is changing, I think just learning from mistakes of the past. I think you have to kind of tune into each kid's personality.
Sure.
And play to their traits, their personality traits, their pros and cons kind of thing. Because you can have a girl that might get aggressive or have something that is typically thought of as like a masculine tendency or whatever, and you have to address that accordingly. Not just from the standpoint of you're a woman, you can't do this as a woman, just as being a good person. How do you manage your anger, your frustration, or whatever? And if you're feeling an aggressive drive, how do you not respond to that and still be a good person? Or for a boy child who's being overly sensitive about something, you have to approach him like, okay, you're having whatever feelings you're having is valid, but this is how you have to kind of make sure you're not letting your emotions get the best of you kind of thing. So it's like, because I find that we kind of gave the example already about like preparing a young lady about going out there in the world of dating and what guys going to be like. That to me comes back to a generalized lesson you have to give kids no matter what, because and what do I mean by that? It's not letting somebody take advantage of you or not letting yourself be vulnerable. Now, how that plays out in the life of each child, male or female, might be different. Life when a child of two male children who may have different personalities might be different. You know what I mean? Maybe one is a giver, and in him being a giver, you got to watch for people that's going to take advantage of you and not appreciate what you're giving to them and just look to take, and not give anything back. As a woman, if you're in there in a relationship with a guy, that guy might want to take advantage of you physically. Or if you're a giver, then it might be somebody trying to take advantage of you financially as well. It could be, some of those same things could apply, regardless of male or female. And it's that general prepare you for do these good things, avoid these bad things, and know what to kind of watch out for. You know what I mean? And I try to play it up to each child because I think that a thing that we are, I don't want to say learning necessarily right now, but I think a thing that's kind of very prevalent now is I want my parenting style to be very give and take. I want it to be a lot of listening because I think that, and this is even from looking back in my childhood and how my parents interacted with their parents and my aunts and uncles and everything else, and just seeing how generations past were handled. I don't feel like it was. there wasn't a lot of voice given to children in times past.
Well, I agree.
Right?
100%.
And there's a time and a place for that, but I think that there is something to be said for hearing the child out sometimes too, and listening to them in order to have a better response for what it is they need. You know what I mean?
Because understand them too.
Exactly, exactly. So allowing them time to kind of speak openly and speak honestly about what they're going through and what they're feeling, and to kind of talk through those feelings, and you guide them. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I think that's a universal thing to me, and it's like, are there going to be some specific things you got to talk to a girl about, maybe not a boy? Yes, but again, I kind of go back to it can still be generalized in some ways, you know what I mean? And you can still kind of talk to both of them about the things to watch out for, and then tell them, now, hey, now you as a boy, maybe you're going to go out there, maybe your experience is going to be this, maybe it's going to be that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean the girl's not going to go through the same thing. And we're in this time now where traditional roles aren't really being observed the way they used to be, right?
Yeah.
So I think it kind of has to be that more generalized. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's an accommodation or a compromise or whatever. I think it's just a matter of you got to be prepared for anything you're gonna see out there. And again, watching out for people trying to take advantage of you, and because even in society, there's going to be different things that a man and woman can do to lose respect, regardless of whatever's happening with roles out there. It's like, and I talk to my boys a lot about you have to be mindful of your words, because if you go out there and you say something stupid or you're wasting time that you have when somebody's listening to you, as a man, you're going to lose stock and credibility. I don't see that happening as much with women, but a woman in a professional environment absolutely is going to be the same thing. You know what I mean? So I have to tell my daughter the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I know that the conversations sometimes of male and females are different. You know what I mean? So I may not address that as heavily with my daughter, but I'm going to talk to her about the same kind of thing. Make sure you're talking educated about things that matter, and not just blabbering so much that people don't want to listen when it's time for you to say something important. I'm going to tell that to either one of them. You know what I mean?
I agree with that.
But a man might lose respect by running his mouth too much and not taking time to think about what he says. I don't see that happen with women as often. Now, a woman, the way you conduct yourself around a man, you're going to make yourself lose respect if you conduct yourself around a man a certain way, whereas a man can do some of those similar things, not going to be judged the same way. So there are still some of those things you got to prepare him for.
Yeah.
But I still think that comes back to hear them out, see what they're going through, what's kind of in their mind, how they're developing, and try to help gauge them and recalibrate them as much as you can. And a lot of times just by asking questions. Like you said, how is that working out for you?
Yeah.
What kind of person do you want to be?
Yeah.
How do you want to be remembered?
That's the key.
What do you want people to think about you?
Questions.
Not that you have to just conduct yourself in a way to make sure people aren't thinking negatively about you. Not that you want to make every decision based on how somebody else is going to look at you, but being mindful of you can be an example. And if people are going to look at you and find an example, do you want them to find a good example or a bad example? I'm not going to tell you the answer. You tell me. What do you think? What's your feeling? You know what I mean?
Let me ask y'all this. How do y'all handle, and are you comfortable with, and do you use this as a tool, displaying disappointment? Do you use that as a tool? Are you careful with it? How do y'all handle displaying disappointment to a
Very
friend?
good question. Very good.
Because
That's critical.
Very good question.
it's critical, but it's very touch and go, right? I mean, you can't just blast them.
No.
But at the same time, it is imperative, and it's a teaching tool to show a kid, you know what, that really disappointed. Because I always felt like I never wanted to disappoint my parents. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to use it to control them, but you want to use it to teach them that everything that you're doing is not perfect. Learn from it and be better. I'm disappointed, but that's it. Like, I'm not trying to make you feel like crap, but I'm using this as, because I know you look up to me, you're looking for an answer. I'm disappointed in that.
I think the way to do that safely is, because when I have to use it as a tool, I make sure I kind of put it like, I know you're capable of doing better.
That's good. Yeah. See, that's good, but that's good.
Yeah, because it's like
you put the ball in their court.
Exactly, and it's not disappointment like I hate you, I think you suck. You know what I mean?
Or you're a loser.
Exactly. No, it's like you made a bad choice this time, but I think you have it in you enough to make a better choice next time you go through this, and think about this more next time.
That's powerful. I was about to say, to add that concept of the fact that this is not the end. This is this time, and next time you have an opportunity. I think that right there is the key between turning a person into somebody that is a perpetual pleaser because they don't want to disappoint anything around them. And somebody who is like, okay, well, I have to observe whatever mistake I make shift and then make better choices in the future. I think as long as we leave that window open there, then you're not creating somebody, because I mean we've run into people, I'm sure you guys have. I've run into people that are, that are devastated if they disappoint anybody. Or they operate themselves in such a timid way, specifically for the purpose of not disappointing anybody. And so they never have an independent thought about it ever. You know what I mean? Yeah, they lack that. Right.
I love what you're saying. That is the best to me, because what it says and what it communicates to a child is, I see better for you. I see better in you.
Yes.
Oh, I thought I cut you off there.
No, I burned.
Oh, no, you good. Yeah. Now, what that says is, I see better in you, and I challenge you to see better for yourself.
Yeah.
That's all. And I think that's the best, because the thing about disappointment as a tool is you can shatter. You don't want to shatter. Like, you're not trying to crush them, because then that builds resentment. Then they look at you a certain way as a tyrant and somebody that they can never please. And you don't want to do that. So those careful words, to me, are powerful.
So the thing is that I want to add to that is which I like that. Right. One thing that I want to add to that is you might have to nudge them in the better way of thinking.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I think that's to go back to how we were raised in our generation. I'm not sure if we were, like you said, wasn't listened to right. And I want to take that a little bit further as well, on how to think. You know what I'm saying? Like how to properly analyze.
That's what it boils down to.
You know,
so much of it.
You know what I'm saying? Being more analytical.
Yes.
Critical thinking.
Thinking this over. Because then when you do ask them the question, like, how is it working out for you? Or I see better than you see yourself. And they'll say, well, what do you mean? Or if it's kind of like ping-ponging in their brain and whatnot, an example would probably be a very, very good thing to give, just to nudge them in the way of thinking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. See, our generation will say, God said no, so he can't.
That's it. Nobody can beat that.
Exactly.
I have a question. So it's funny that you mentioned our upbringing.
It's funny.
The way that we were brought up, right or wrong, whatever.
Right.
Okay, here's my question. It stems back to what Al was asking. What do you want for your children? So we know that there are families who, for instance, let's say, great granddad was a doctor and granddad was a doctor and daddy is a doctor, and they expect you to go to medical school, right?
Right.
How much direction do you guys think as parents? How much direction do you think is too much in terms of I missed my boat on being an engineer, going to I dropped out of college, blah blah blah. Listen, son, you're gonna be an engineer when you grow up. Where I love baseball so much that I'm gonna put you in every baseball camp I can find, and only thing we're gonna work on every day, all day is baseball. I read about this one guy who is really interested in chess, and I think he had 2 daughters, and somewhere in Germany or Ireland, somewhere. Anyway, he literally completed an experiment that spanned the entire childhood of his 2 daughters, and he gave them chess sets for pretty much every holiday and birthday. He bought them books. He put them in chess clubs and classes and training and all of this thing. They're both grandmasters now, both of his daughters. But my question is, how much force in one particular direction that I want as a parent is enough? How much is too little? How much is too much? Because every person, like going back to what you were saying, each one of us is an individual. We all have our own hopes and dreams. Some of that comes from what we've observed in our childhood, but some of it may come from just, this is my passion. Maybe I'm good at chess, but maybe that's not my passion. Maybe I'm more concerned about music or dance or poetry, whatever. So that's my question to you guys. As parents who have, and especially actually both of y'all have adult sons. As parents who have adult children and children who are still quite young, how much effort do you think is, and you don't have to tell us how much you put in, but how much do you think is valuable in terms of guiding a child towards a specific destination in terms of that. You know, I want you listen. When you get married, you're gonna be a. I mean, when you grow up, you're gonna be a husband and a father. What if I don't want to get married? You know what I mean? You're gonna. Yeah, I know that. You know, you're gonna be raised, and I'm a pastor, and you know, I'm gonna raise you up, and you're gonna be my successor, and you know what I'm saying? Yeah. There's a lot of that in our world, so I would like to hear you.
And that's probably the reason why the world is in the condition that it's in.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? When you get that strong arm parent, you know what I'm saying? Where I think that sometimes even the entitlement and whatnot kind of can stir up, if that makes sense.
Entitlement,
if that makes sense.
Entitlement,
a child end up. That's another story. That's another story.
But the entitlement
of other parents, yeah, influence.
I see.
Yeah, and that could go down another path.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
You know, of thinking. But I was just thinking for that child, man. For me, I kind of watch.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of watch what they do. You know what I'm saying? And then I kind of nudge and say, "Hey, would you be interested?" Or give them something, and I kind of assess where their mind is at of what they want to do. That's at least what I do for that to answer that question. Like with my daughter, they're very artsy, right? I mean she made this one.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She loved doing that stuff. So Tamara just went on and said, "I'm gonna get you an Etsy shop," right? So now she's making things to do that. So we'll see how that goes. So what it is,
not working too hard.
I know you didn't even see. Right. You know this. This right. You go back to the bracelet.
The quota.
Right. We got numbers to fill, man.
Joe Jackson.
Right. But she enjoys it, and that's what I see. And I always ask Steve. I said, "What do you want to do? You want to be a video game programmer?"
Oh, nice.
You know what I'm saying? So what I would like, and he draws all the time. So the whole idea is nurture and assess what they do and kind of help them in that direction. Who knows if they'll stay there?
Sure.
But at least for the time being, you set that stage.
You got them focus.
Yeah.
Some type of focus.
Yeah. That's for me right now. You know,
that sounds like a good. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I do the same thing because like I idolized my dad coming up, so I went to the same company he worked at, and I put 20 years in there too. You know what I mean? And he never pressured me like this is where you got to go. You're gonna follow my footsteps, kind of thing. It's just that's what I wanted to do because I saw how he conducted himself. I saw how he was respected. So me looking at that was like, okay. I ended up following those footsteps closer. You know what I mean? Just by nature of idolizing my dad. You know what I mean? And trying to emulate him. But with my kids, I try to tell them. I don't try to steer them away from the path that I've taken. I call out when they're doing something that's like in a similar vein, but I try to make it a point, and I think of like this the psychological. It's not a game, but just playing in the psyche of another human being. I let them know too. A lot of times, if I see them doing something that I'm not capable of, like wow, you stepped into this area that I have no talent or no skill in whatsoever, and you're killing it. You know what I mean? You're killing it. You have great talent here. Let me know if you need something to help you. Let me know if you want to pursue this further. And I try to just support them in that way. Like, you know, my kids took a remote control car apart one time. So I went and got them like this little play, like kitty circuit board kind of thing. They like kind of put together little circuits. They played with it twice, never played with it again, right? So it was like you kind of have this trial and error kind of thing. And they're all very artistic. I bought easels, I bought drawing boards. It's all still sitting there in packages, but they still do art in other places, right? So it's like trying to just kind of find where they have talent and where they have a skill set and just get behind them and support them. You know what I mean? And let them find their own way. But again, my main way of encouraging them is a lot of times too, like you're into something now that I've never done or I don't really know how to do, kill it. You know what I mean? Just put your all into it because you're already doing good. If I had known how to do this kind of stuff when I was your age and all those kind of things to kind of encourage them and just kind of keep pushing them and to find their own way, to be successful at whatever they do. And that's the thing. Give them a mindset of how to be successful and how to overcome adversity for those kind of things. But not that they have to go and follow in the exact same path as anybody else. You know what I mean?
And to add to your thought, man, to go back a few minutes ago, to talk about what you said about making them happy and different things like that. One thing that I try to do is be very realistic with them. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that's not very happy. Right. You know what I'm saying?
True.
So, and I think that the worst thing to do is give a child anything that they want. Right. I think that's damaging. Right.
You mean everything?
Everything, or even maybe anything is the wrong word. But we can fool around. Sure, we can fool around. I think you know what I'm saying. So the thing is this is teaching limitations. That's another thing, is about teaching limitations of you can't have everything. There should always be a teaching moment for children as they grow up, that if they always feel, let's go back to that word entitlement again, if you give them everything from daddy or mommy, then when they go into the world, they're going to feel like they're entitled to have the same thing.
Absolutely.
I think parents that do that destroys the psyche, like you said, of the child. Now they feel that they're entitled. It's super harmful. And how do you unlearn that? That's going to be a very painful experience for the individual. So now when my kids come around, like for I'm gonna just say this right now. Right now, my wife and I, we're resetting.
Okay.
Right, financially, and the way we're thinking and different things like that. So that means that we're pushing the plate, so to speak, on certain things so we can develop in other areas. Okay.
Yeah.
So is that affecting the kids? Yes, but it's teaching them how to balance and teaching them the needs and the what do you call it, the haves and the have-nots. You know what I'm saying? And I think that when they see that you can still survive without having certain things and still be happy, and that's the whole idea. Have happy and have joy. We're getting somewhere. And I think I'm loving this conversation, y'all, because it's actually making me realize that I am doing something. You know what I'm saying? I'm actually doing something, and I think by us having this conversation, I'm able to articulate it and talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes you feel like you're not doing it. You ever feel like that? But then when you start talking about it, you're like, man, I am actually doing something with my kids. You know what I'm saying?
An effective way to, I think, this worked for me as a kid. Like, when a kid wants something, you gotta just show them how much it costs. You see how much it costs? My grandfather would always do that. Like, hey, Dad, I want these shoes. How much that cost? Yeah, you see how much these cost? You got the money for it? It would be a serious conversation. Like, you actually got the cash? Right. And then he would stare at me. I'm like, but the thing is, but the thing is, it teaches a lesson though. It's critical thinking. It's like, because you make your kids relatable, they can relate to you now.
Yes.
Say, wow, mommy and daddy, y'all got to show them all the bills.
Very good.
You see when you let the shower run and the water run. You see when you flush the toilet 10 times a day. You get the water bill. Right. And just leave it laying around. Right. Leave the bills laying around, and then look stressed out. You and your wife, just look stressed out. Like, how we gonna pay these bills? What can we get the kids to do? I had those discussions so they can hear it.
We get a little allergy.
Yeah, we got 3 of them. Because I remember asking my father one time, I was like, Dad, why don't we get a dishwasher? Because he was like, I was like, I'm sick of washing dishes. Why don't we get a dishwasher? He was like, I got 3 already. I got 3 dishwashers. And I was like,
and y'all call it way more than the regular.
Exactly. And I was like, it didn't motivate me, but I was like, that was logical. He got me. You know what I'm saying? So you can get your kids on that wave of thinking where they have to actually think about
it,
man, stuff actually do cost.
I think there's a lot to be said about, like you said, creating that sense of entitlement in the child. Because, and you put it absolutely perfectly, they won't be able to stay. They might stay entitled. Unfortunately, some of them will, but the ones who actually go through the growing process of breaking out of that, you use the perfect word, painful. I've witnessed people break on the transition from being in a world that everything revolves around them, and to coming into the real world where they're like, nah, you just another cog in the wheel, bro. You might as well move it along.
You are not a unique and beautiful snow. The world will tell you.
You are, but the world don't view you like that.
Right. Yeah. So the world will teach you hard on that.
Yep.
I love it, man.
You gotta make your own way.
Yep.
I remember, man. Like, to me, I'm telling you, I'm bringing this up. I spoke it in an earlier podcast. Everybody had Nintendos. I had Action Max. and check this out. In order to play it, it was a VCR. So when you want to play it again, you push reverse.
You gotta
rewind it. Oh, that's horrible, man.
That's real bad. Video games on tapes, bro.
You made the best of it.
Oh, man.
That's terrible. Man, I had cats came over, man. It was like, what is that?
You know what's cool
Why
about?
does it smell like that? I don't remember like it's burning all the time every time you turn it on. Smell electronics cooking.
Right.
Had the snow.
Yeah,
You had the snow in there. It was wearing out.
I don't remember that, man.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it just builds such character though when your parents are like, you can't afford it, you're not getting it. 'Cause we heard
Or
that.
even if they can't afford it. The thing is, I think so. There's a statement that says, "Strong men create good times.
Mhm.
Good times create weak men,
Yep.
and then the cycle starts over.
Yes.
Weak men create hard times, and then hard times create strong men."
Yep.
I think we witness a lot of people that are in. Obviously, everybody fits somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, if I'm a strong man in a certain sense, in terms of, let's say, finances, if I have the resources to buy my children everything, I'm still not going to do that because I don't want to create a weak person.
Absolutely.
There's some point when daddy's money is going to run out. I'm going to die or go broke or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I don't want my kids, and I don't have any, but I'm saying hypothetically, who would want their children to be out in the world thinking that everybody's supposed to hand them something? That's ridiculous. You have to be at least. I think there should be a balance. I wouldn't want to see a child have an Action Max, but I would also, but I also wouldn't want to see a child that anytime they open their mouth to ask for something, it's automatically just because that's not realistic in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
the world doesn't operate like that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we can ask for things, we can work towards things, and we can have whatever it is that we want. But that takes work. It takes effort.
Yeah.
Just me opening my mouth and just sitting there and waiting back.
Yeah.
That's breaking a child's.
Yes.
It breaks a child's will to work. It breaks a child's will to work with other people, to be interact. Because if I get everything I want, what do I need anybody else for?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that, like you said, whether you can or can't afford it, there has to be a balance. No, you can't have that. And I don't even really have a reason why. You just can't have it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think it's a matter of trying to find that balance too. Because like you said, that's I think that cycle is very valid, but like almost any other cycle or process, it can be broken.
Sure.
And I think it's a matter of trying to find where is that middle ground where you're not creating
Too much of an easy
anything, right? Kind of give them like that good even keel where they can still learn. Because like one thing I'm fortunate with my kids because like a lot of little stuff they want, they buy it. They don't even come to me anymore for a lot of it. Like one of them,
I'm gonna come live at your house.
I'm saying no, they buy it.
Right.
They're buying it. No, I'm saying they don't come to me and ask for that stuff. They're buying it from their own money a lot of times.
Yeah.
Even my youngest one, 12 years old, is stuff he wants in his game. He comes to me and just hands me the bill. I'm like, what is this for? I want to get this game on this other thing because it goes to my credit card. Mm-hmm. So before he doesn't even come to ask me anymore, he comes and gives me the money like I had this much or he was saving up for it or whatever. Mm-hmm. His friends got something. He's giving me the money automatically. So it's like I haven't even had to really beat it into him like stop asking me for a video game every week. He just if he has birthday money sent down, he saves the money for what he wants. So he comes by and pays for it. So a lot of the little stuff that my kids want, like even like I'm thinking like just their Amazon accounts, everything else, they're paying for it. And they just come back and give us the money for the credit card bill or whatever. So they'll ask me for like bigger stuff, you know what I mean? And I'll make them wait like birthdays or Christmas and stuff like that. But I try to find that balance where they'll understand you can't just have everything without paying for it. This is how you go. This is how money comes. You get to pay for it. You gotta learn how to provide for that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So try to find that balance.
So I think you just hit the nail on the head because I think the balance comes from the strong men that could create good times.
That's what it is.
As long as the strong man is also wise,
right?
Then that good time can carry over and break that cycle to the next. You know what I mean? So a strong man that is wise can create more strong, wise people that come behind him. That's the break. That's where the cycle can break.
I agree, definitely. Yeah, I think another good lesson to teach kids is like you tell them you can't afford it, you still get it, and then when they're all happy about it, you just say, this is kind of cold in the house.
Nice.
Right. We got you this console.
You can turn that PlayStation on and scoot real close to it.
So we got you the PlayStation, but we have no heat now. Just got a guilt trip all day long. That's cruel, but might be effective.
That's funny.
No, man.
Yeah. And I think it's the goals too, right? Like when you think about the setting goals, they don't need to know that you're setting a goal, right? Doing something subliminally where kind of like a wax on, wax off type of thing, where they're actually building a skill and they don't even realize it. You see what I'm saying?
Give an example.
Right. About to be making some.
Right. That's a new car y'all got, man.
Right. Yeah, Nora paid for it. She got a visor on. Right. Upstairs. Right. We put stuff.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
Oh man.
So what do you mean when you said that they don't need to know that you are
like Mr. Miyagi.
Okay.
Karate Kid. He told Danny to go wash the car. And he's he's like, man, I came here to learn karate.
That movie was great. I love that.
You know what I'm saying?
I was even confused with them. Like, why do I got to wash the car? I want to know how to fight. Why am I painting like this?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, so that's kind of the thing, man. Classic movie.
Yeah.
It's a good lesson.
Good lesson, man. Yeah. And that stuck with me as a kid. Even Mr. Miyagi taught me something, right? That you can learn something subliminally and you don't even really know it. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's most of childhood. You know what I mean? The lessons that we learn, clean up your room, all these things are different skills for later on in life. Don't spend all your allowance and one day on the first day you get it. Put some aside so you can buy a video game next week. That type of thing. All of it. I think that's right. I think a lot of what we show our kids or kids that we are around is that exact thing. Because I don't need to tell you directly, hey, listen, I'm teaching you to clean your room so you can clean your house when you get grown. I want you to clean your room, and then I want you to wax the car, or I want you to go cut the grass, or whatever it might be.
And they don't realize these are tools. Once again, and it really takes them a far way of discipline. I think discipline is such a beautiful thing, and you only have such a short time. The window is very small, man. I'm telling you.
And I think it's cool. Something you kind of mentioned, man, about getting away from, I guess, archetypes or just kind of
generalization.
Yeah, because you can't just say, okay, you're going to be a homemaker, honey. And guy, you have to work 80, 90 hours a week. You don't have to say that. You literally can just, because I love what you said about your father. I feel the same way about that. You just watched him work somewhere. I mean, he didn't give you an eye like, son, you're not like Jim. Right. And just say that like that's where you're working. Right. Wink. Make me look good. Right. But you just looked up to a man in your life that he was doing right by his family. That was the lesson more so. Like you worked where you wanted to work. But the lesson more so is I'm looking at a guy, because that's how I looked at my father. I'm looking at a guy just take care of his family. Right. What does it take to do that? Right. Well, I see him getting up early, going to work. My mom seems happy. They look happy. So the action is, let me learn how to just take care of things. I've helped him fix stuff around the house. Let me change his light switch, change his light bulb. Little things, because what it does ultimately is makes us useful human beings. And I think that's the ultimate goal for us all, man and woman, is to be a useful individual, productive in society, and useful in the way that you feel best. Yes. Not because you're not useful if you're picking up garbage. Exactly. You're not useful. You want to be useful in find the lane that you want to be in as from a child. So I like what you're doing. Kind of because my parents, they kind of gave us the freedom to say, try different things and then find that lane and then nurture it. And because they bought me art supplies, they put me in paint classes, and they just kind of did it casually. They didn't just say, here's a brush, man. Why don't you paint? It was more so like, hey son, I just got
an Etsy store to run.
Right, we got bills to pay. Right. It was more so just kind of, look, I got you this pencil set for Christmas or for your birthday. And just kind of encouraging stuff. Right. But the ultimate thing is, what I've grown up to feel like is just a productive, useful individual. Yeah. Not a people pleaser, not necessarily somebody that's got to win the approval of the masses, but just somebody that just understands the importance of being significant in other people's lives through my own actions. And doing it earnestly. Yes. Not because I got to go do this again or I got to go serve at church or something. It's more so like I'm doing this because it makes me feel valuable in a very subtle way. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I may not be a baller, I may not be making top dollar at this time, but what I do know is that I place more value on relationships and the nurturing of my interactions with other people through my own actions. Right. And so that's what looking at our fathers do, that simple thing of, I just got to take care of my family. I'm just going to work because I got to take care of my family. You look at that and it's a foundation for building so many different things as it relates to how do I see myself as a responsible individual when I turn 18? Yes. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to lay up on some chick and just, wait for her to get her tax return. I'm literally saying to myself, I want to be an individual that my lady looks up to and can respect me, and then my children can respect me as a man. And then that goes a long way for the boys. They're like, hey, I want to be respectable like my father because I think being respectable is cool. And then they go to school and they lead the charge. They carry the torch. And then the girls, they conduct themselves a certain way where it's just like, my mother doesn't take crap from my father. They respect each other. They go into a room, and when they come out, everything's straight. So I'm going to conduct myself in a way where I'm not taking anything from a bum. You know what I'm saying? You don't want your daughter bringing a bum home, dude. You know what I'm saying? That's got to be the worst, man. So, but being productive individuals in society, I think, should be the resounding thing or goal as it relates to rearing a child from childhood to adulthood. Say, how do you want? Because that's what I was saying earlier. Like, what do you see for your kid? You know what I'm saying? It's a question that we are going to have different answers for.
And I think and we talked about this in a previous episode before, but I think a key component of that too. I'm honest with my kids to the point of embarrassment. Right. I'm more than willing to embarrass myself or tell them something embarrassing about a mistake I've made, with the intent of letting them know, like, I made this mistake. This was the result. And in order for you to not have to go through that same pain, I suggest you do it this way, or I suggest you do this. And again, I'm honest. I've had very long conversations with all of my kids going into detail about mistakes I've made, just to try to help them see that, instead of, again, just the do what I say kind of thing, just I want to tell you why I'm explaining to you why I don't want you to do this, or why I want you to do this other thing. I've made this mistake. I've gone down this path. Exactly, because they need to be able to relate, and they need to be able to see that. Because again, I think that our generation looked at all the adults above us. Like, there was adult business that kids just weren't involved in. I've broken that a little bit, you know what I mean? And it's yet to be seen whether it's the right move or not. But I'm very honest with them, and I have some kind of adult conversation with them, even young. But it's for the purpose of letting them know I've made these mistakes, I've done this, I've done these things wrong, I haven't done everything right all the time, I don't do everything right all the time now. And here's what I've learned from my mistakes, so that you can learn from my mistakes, not as a kid. You know what I mean?
That's powerful too. That's a powerful way to do that. And I don't see how it could backfire unless one of the kids was like, hey, Dad, you're allowed to be.
Right.
You're allowed to be. You know what I'm saying? Write a book.